like celebrating Black elitism. And because like we say that like it's a bad thing, you know, like Black people they shouldn't have money. Like Black people shouldn't have nice, like why is that? When we say Black elitism, like what is it that we're attacking? You know, like what is our issue with that? Now, if we're talking about elitism as it relates to like white supremacy and classism and, you know, a skin complexion and all that, then yes, like we have to erode those systems. But a part of me feels like when I look at like the flappers and like, you know, Josephine Baker and like the glorified, beautiful people of the Harlem Renaissance, you know, they call the founding of the NAACP elitism, and, you know, the wars that kind of took place between Marcus Garvey and W.E.B. Du Bois. And I just think there's a conversation to be had around that too. Like, what are we calling Black elitism and why are we mad about it? I don't know if it's like you shouldn't be aspirational to participate in the white man system of capitalism, which is fair. Then let's have that conversation. But sometimes I feel like we're saying because you don't know where people came from. You may have come from the gutter, but you have built up this thing. And now you're automatically considered Black elite, which means you are no longer a part of the community I recognize. You can't advocate for me. You don't understand, you know, the struggle. And so there's a disconnect. And I don't want to demonize anybody who has that thought, but I find it curious. So anyway, we can get into that.
I don't know that people draw down all of those inferences from elitism. I think we can refer to the Black elite without attaching to it derogatory or sort of sentiment. I don't think the word elite in and of itself is a negative, is a pejorative. I think elite means set out and set apart. And I don't know what Webster's would say about that, but that's sort of how I view it. Now, if I were saying someone was acting stuck up, that would be something different than what I would associate with elite. I don't know if either of you all are watching The Gilded Age.
Don't say anything about it. I'm about to start.
All I'll say, so Felicia Rashad has entered this season.
I feel like you're about to ruin something.
Yeah, he's definitely about to. Spoiler alert.
No, I'm not. All I'm going to say about it is with her entry into the show, this idea of the really dynamism that exists within the Black community, that we are not all one thing. You're going to see, if you watch that show, you'll see that beautifully, I think, demonstrated in this show. The fact that even post emancipation and not long after, you had Black folks who for generations already were in, you know, parts of this country vacationing and owning second homes and spending seasons there. And we would never be associated with having had that in our lineage. But I think that show will help to put it on full display. And it was, honestly, I got to tell you, probably my first time ever seeing a period piece like The Gilded Age that did such a dynamic job with showing the range of Blackness, even though the show seems to be centered around whiteness. If you have that impression, I would ask you to challenge it and take another look.
People love it. They've been talking about it a lot.
I think that the elite conversation is very nuanced. I think there are some people that see the word elite and feel excluded. I just talked earlier about being at the National Bar Convention, and my first National Bar Conventions I went to as a law school student. I'm the only lawyer in my family. My family's pretty well educated, mostly college educated, but we didn't own a lot. My grandmother, and this gets back to our conversation that we were having a couple of weeks ago, my grandparents worked really hard. Grandmother was in a union at Boeing. Grandfather was a Pullman porter. They worked very, very hard to buy the house they had. And then when my grandmother was older, she did a reverse mortgage. So that's a property in our family that we didn't keep. I had other members of my dad's family who owned their homes and sold them. My mom's siblings owned their homes and sold them. When I was a baby, my parents owned a home in a prestigious area in Seattle called Madison Park. My dad fell upon hard times and sold that. So we're not a family where there's generational wealth that has been passed down. When my mom's mom passed, she left some money, but it wasn't a lot. So coming to this conference, this convention when I was in law school, and I saw people who brought their children, and their children are raised together, judges' kids playing together. They have spouses events and things, you join in the links that I now have quit. But, they had link spouses and you're an error link and all of these things. That is a part of Black elitism that is exclusionary. And I don't think it's by design. It's they're trying to create spaces where they're saying this is okay. But for those of us who were not born into it, it feels very isolating. It feels very like, where do I belong? Where do I fit? And is there a space for me to on-ramp my family into this? And I don't want to do that at the exclusion of other Black folks. So I just wish that in those conversations, especially when you bring up WEB, where he talks about the talented 10th was a reality, but it's not the vision, right? And so I just would like for us to hold true multiple things. One is that we need to figure out a way to on-ramp more Black people into something they so desperately and righteously deserve, but also be aware of the fact that we do create these cliques, for lack of a better term, or silos, I'll say, that feel like there's everybody doesn't belong. So I just wish that we could knock out some of that.
You know what?
This is going to be controversial.
I was going to say, I have a disagreement too. But
okay. I was just talking about my experience.
No, it's not a disagreement. I think me and Andrew might be about to say the same thing. So you go for it, Andrew.
No, so I'll just say my wife was of that, right? Her daddy was a university president in the Boule, her mother a Link member, and she grew up in Jack and Jill and all those groups that I had no appreciation for whatsoever growing up, because I wasn't a part of any of that. And my family, my parents very specifically didn't come from that kind of upbringing, a good home, but certainly not that. You mentioned that those groups then themselves sort of become exclusionary. And there is some exclusion to the sense that there are certain qualifications that you have to meet in order to qualify for membership, as similar to sororities and fraternities, right? You can't be a Delta or an AK or any other Divine Nine if you hadn't gone to college. Otherwise, you'd have to be honorary. Right. You'd have to be made an honorary member. So that even has criteria to it. But I actually think these organizations serve a really important and vital role at helping to keep those who have ascended into certain levels of wealth and entry into certain echelons of society, who felt, quite frankly, that they didn't look around and see their peers.
That's true.
They were surrounded by all white faces in places that they found themselves either having to assimilate to, sort of rich whiteness in order to be included, or you found yourself really shying away from it, separating yourself, which also has the effect of sort of stunting your further evolution in those spaces. And what I think some of these organizations do is they say, you're not by yourself, brother. You're not by yourself, sister. Like, together, we may not be in the same company. We may not own the same company. We may not be invested in the same places, but we understand almost without speaking what the culture is that all of us have to sort of deal with and encounter. The same thing, for instance, what do you call it? The Masons, the Masonic organization, which I have to tell you, I got to give a hat off to the Masons and the Masonic lodges in Florida, because I wasn't a member when I ran for governor. But when I was invited into their halls and to talk to their members, you hit every rung of society in those spaces. I have cousins who haven't dreamt of going to college, didn't go, don't want to go, but are so high up within those organizations. My grandfather was a member. My grandmother was an Eastern Star, and they were working people. And, my granddaddy cut yards, and my grandmother made house and raised, 18 head of children. Yes, by the same man, right? And they held those organizations, the Eastern Stars and and my grandfather's Masonic Association, like they were family. They were family, and they learned about organization and Robert's Rules of Order, and they ascended. And so I'll just say, yes, does it have its exclusion? Yes, but I think back to a time where we were in places where we just didn't have many comrades with us, and that the only place you could go to find it was probably church on Sunday. And short of that, there were no professional organizations and otherwise that brought you in and held you, and in your toughest of moments, steeled your body so you didn't feel like you had to quit. And I think those organizations kind of serve that really vital function.
Well, I was I might be controversial still. I thought we were going to say the same thing, but I appreciate both your points. I think, this isn't a conversation necessarily with disagreement, though I imagine our viewers might have some disagreement with us, and we welcome that, of course. So drop us a video. And again, if you like the conversation, please share it with a friend because we'd love to make this more interactive. But I think, I grew up not elite at all. Whatever the opposite of elite is, like that's how I grew up. No one in my family went to college, even like a few people dropped out of high school. I mean, it was just not, we didn't have money. A lot of my family was on public assistance. And so, but we were, it's not like we were out there panhandling. We just didn't come from a lot. When my life began to change because I made it change, there were times where I didn't want to be around that. And I think this is kind of a part of the conversation we'll have today, because the Vineyard, for example, I have not enjoyed the Vineyard as much the past couple of years because I think the crowd has changed. Now, the Vineyard was a Black beach where Black families could go and have safety, and it still exists like that. I think that's one of the beautiful things. Like when you are a Black parent on the Vineyard and your 12-year-old comes over and says, "Mommy, I just met Johnny. I'm going to his house." Mamas and daddies like, "Okay, bye." Like I don't have to meet them. I don't have to know them. It's impolite to lock your doors. Like it's just a community. It's turned into like a Hollywood gathering now. And what I loved about it is you just go get out the beach. My hair would look like I licked my finger and stuck it in a socket. And I'm walking down the street and it's all good and it's great. And it was fine. Now, like you see in weave and lashes on the Vineyard, you see in heels to the beach party. It's just a different environment. And it's not as down. People thought it was elite, but now it's more like aspirationally elite. Like, because you saw the Obamas went there, so now you want to go. But really, it was regular ass Black folks who could afford a second home or rented a second home for the summer. And it was just a great, safe time to relax into who you were. All you do is porch hop and sit on people's. And it's just changed so much. So there are spaces that I want to go that everybody's not invited. And I don't think that's a bad thing. There are places I can't go that I'm not invited. There are rooms I can't get in. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think what's bad is when you're in these spaces and you're looking down on another space. When you feel like I'm in this space and I am better than. I am, subconsciously aspiring for white approval or whiteness. I want to live like white folks. When really we're in these spaces sometimes amongst ourselves having a good time, but it ain't no difference between me being here, at the Inkwell than it is between you at Edgewater Beach in Cleveland or on the beach in Alabama. Like wherever you are my family and I am yours. So that's my thought on Black elitism.
That's fair.
I appreciate that.
That's fair.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.